I want to welcome you to the Ask Jeff YouTube channel. Here's today's question. How long is a generation in the Bible? Well, this is one of those questions that we kind of sort of don't really know what we're talking about. Allow me to explain. In Matthew chapter 1, verse 17, in the genealogy of Jesus, it gives us these three spectrums from Abraham to David, from David to the carrying away, from the carrying away to the Christ. And it says that all of those are respectively 14 generations. However, when you go back in the Old Testament, you'll discover a different timeline for each of those three spectrums and or strata. In Matthew chapter 12, when Jesus is asked to give a sign, he says, an adulterous generation seeks after a sign. He wasn't speaking of a chronological span. He was speaking of an attitude. And then you get to Matthew chapter 24, when Jesus is speaking of the end times, he says that when you begin to see the fig tree bud, that this is the last generation. So the question is kind of a both and, either or neither. And what I mean by that is this. There are times where the Bible speaks of a generation that has nothing to do with the time frame, such as Matthew chapter 12. However, there are times where it does speak of a time frame, i.e. Matthew chapter 24. So you go back into the Old Testament, and there's actually three layers and or levels of generations. You have a 40-year generation. Think the wilderness experience. You have a 70-year generation. Think in terms of the Babylonian captivity. And then sometimes, though rare, it would speak of a 100-year generation. And typically that 100-year generation isn't the lifespan of an individual, but it's more of a cycle of multiple generations being lumped in together with one significant time frame. Now, one of the reasons, and I do not know the motivation for this particular question today, is that last generation question. How does that relate to the fig tree, Israel, 1948, 67, is it 40, 70, 100? At the end of the day, what we discover as the church, as the bride of Jesus Christ, we, the church, are not specifically given any generational numerics as far as in relationship to the return of Jesus Christ. However, in the Bible, a generation is typically 40, sometimes 70, and occasionally 100 years. Great question. If you have one, send it to AskJeff.net. Maybe your question will be tomorrow's.
Thanks for being a part of today's daily question. Now, we answer a question each and every day. Please feel free to submit a new question at AskJeff.net. We may not have gotten to yours today, but we eventually will continue to be a part of this. Subscribe so you don't miss out on a question every day.